Greetings. Let me see. I should be good on battery life. Greetings. Let's give an honor to the source of the Creator, to the Most High, and so forth. Gratitude to the ancestors known and unknown. Yeah. I'm gonna jump right into this one because, a lot of these transits have been revealing a lot of things. If you do follow astrology, if you're not into it, to each their own, but one of these transits that is very highlighting and very telling. Let's say if you have been facing a lot of like internal things, when you hear me speak about mother wound, father wound, when you hear me talk about a lot of internal things, Chiron is representation of like the wounded healer. So it's like the things that are unresolved, repressed, have been suppressed, and so forth. Whether ancestrally, generationally, personally, and so forth. And what that does is that if acknowledged, what I can say when you hear me talk about doing the inner work and shadow work, the importance of acknowledging it has a lot to do with reclaiming your personal power. It mentioned like your self-image, the evolution of that. What else? Our personal boundaries. Because in reclaiming your power inwardly, because a lot of those energies has a lot to do with being that every, whether it's a planet or zodiac sign represents a different energy or carries another energy. Chiron was in Aries, and a lot of that, I think it talks about like power struggles, because Aries rules the head. So it also represents like the sea goat from water element, like from the sea, and then climbs the mountaintop. So you're going from like the subconscious to the surface, which is like the spirit to the physical. And so the Chiron aspect of that is like the wounded healer aspect. It's like the wounded parts of ourselves that the world doesn't really see. It does see, but how much do we hide it? How much have we repressed it? This kind of message is geared towards those who have had emotionally unavailable caregivers, whether a mother, especially like let's say a mother or a father, but just a feminine wound in itself is really huge. The distorted mother aspect, the reason I'm speaking on this has a lot to do with the rise of the divine feminine, which is like the rise of what no longer can be suppressed or repressed within our emotional body, our emotional resonance that we develop from our mothers, grandmothers, and the matriarchal, the maternal, the lineage. It's still passed from our fathers too as well, because again, they came from women. This one is big because I came across an affirmation. I don't remember all of it, but I know that the first thing it said, and this is going to be, let's say if you have a lot of Cancer placements in your natal chart, you carry a lot of Cancer energy, but still the Cancer energy in itself is the maternal, the matriarchal, almost like the unseen aspect. As I said before, it represents home, but it's more so home in the body. And I came across an affirmation that it was said, it says, what does it say? I am held. And I don't mean just like held accountable, but that's important as well. But when I came across that and it says, I am held and I am creating a sanctuary that I deserve within and around me. That was an affirmation. Man, I know a lot of people need to hear that. When I say that, when they say I'm held, it's like I cleared a blockage within myself, mentally and emotionally. And the very thing that came up for me was the mother. that I came through, my grandmother, but especially my mother, because what came up was an image of me holding myself. Like, if you can visualize like your hands holding that little boy within you. And when it says I'm held, I was like, whoa. When I say I got so emotional, the way I never forgot, I won't ever forget that affirmation, because I was holding my son earlier, and I was singing, I am held, I am loved, I am lovable, like a chant, like a hum, like a hymn, or humming. And he was going to start to doze off and rest, but that in itself still reminded me of the little boy that was never held. And the reason I bring this up is that even if you don't know how to relate to someone who was in an abusive home, you're talking about people who have never been embraced, never been held in a safe way, in a comforting way. The reason why this is so vital, especially into adulthood, is because this is something that eventually will affect all their connections, all their relationships. Most likely they will probably cling or connect to something unhealthy in an unhealthy attachment. Like and the reason I say that is because from personal experience, and also realizing the difference between attachment and connection. Like I said, you will always be connected to mother because of the emotional resonance. Now, unhealthy attachment can will lead one, such as myself, to cut ties to those unhealthy attachments, because it no longer serves me. And plus, I realized that I was being scapegoated through. And what I realized also is that we're dealing and have dealt with a maternal lineage for generations, or the matriarchal, who has enabled the patriarchal to also, again, from the fact of what has affected all of us from generations of how mothers were never, no one, to this point has really, they sympathized, but they never had empathy for them. People never put themselves there. My message isn't to convince people, to sway them, to believe, to accept anything I say. The words that I utter comes from a place that only I and Source, the Most High, whatever you subscribe to, but just for me, I only know the depths of that emotion, that emotional pain, that those experiences. So therefore, the greatest person who can give that solution is myself. And I don't look for the external validation from that. So this digging deep within myself, realizing like, whoa, I came to a conclusion. I got clarity. I was like, I was never held, not just emotionally, but physically, from my mother. And the reason I express this is because a lot of men, once you start to realize like the disconnect that they've had from their emotions, reflect and connect back to their mother, then you will see or be able eventually to emphasize and learn that, again, at a point in time, he was a little boy. And again, from depending on the demographics, I know mostly where I grew up in, for a lot of people, whether it's some type of background religiously, where again, you had some grandmothers and mothers that will naturally emphasize or connect, feel like they have a more healthy connection with religion and other things rather than their own self, which trickles down to their children and grandchildren. So the reason why when I read the affirmation, I immediately start crying is because it brought up something within me to realize, like, I know the abandonment aspect of what I dealt with from a woman who, again, through substance abuse and whatever she was going through at that moment, through my childhood development, that abandonment of herself led to abandoning her, that abandonment emotionally, or whatever she went through, in her childhood, that abandonment she probably never faced, pretty much trickles down to what you see happen today with children, or what you see happen, with us. And I've seen it continue through. I've seen like how my sisters are trying to seek, or unconsciously trying to, they want so much of there to be emotional connection, and in a healthy way, that sometimes we just try to, well, I've just noticed the fact of like how I had to get away and cut ties from the emotionally, mentally, spiritually, all across the board, like in an unhealthy way. And now, like I've said before, it looks different from, women who have had mothers as such that were emotionally unavailable. What I will say to y'all, and for those who have dealt with emotionally unavailable caregivers or parents or people, most likely if you have experienced some type of emotional abandonment or abuse, or even physical abandonment, you've never been held. What does that mean? You've never been held emotionally. Now, let me show you how deep this goes mentally, emotionally, and ancestrally. If your mother never cared for herself and her emotions, and she never had empathy, she never had the support around her when she was giving birth or through her process of giving birth, you have to realize that there is a development going on there. There is a process going on there that most people overlook. And the reason they overlook is because this is a repetitive and learned behavior. This is a pattern that continues, and you see it demonstrated in the world. So our mothers never held themselves. Think about that. If my mother never held space for her inner child, if her mother never held space for her inner child, then most likely my grandmother, which I've seen displayed, is so, and she has a religious belief, but there, and I'm not saying like she prays, she does her thing, and it's not at all saying that she doesn't care and sympathize and for her daughter, my mother. But at the same moment, can I say empathy? No, because I've heard people, the way that they have talked and said things to my mother, I'm realizing like some of us are the ones that, as we learn more about ourselves deeper and deeper, and begin to hold space for that inner child, begin to hold space for the versions of us that was not loved, and as we begin to hold space and love that version and embrace that version and emphasize with that version, one of the most challenging things I realize is, for a lot of us, is to be able to have empathy for the very ones who harmed us, even in not knowing how to love themselves. That's been one of the very things where I realized where a lot of my anger and rage and resentment came from, with the mother wound connected to women and so forth. And it was simply because, if I look at the root cause of it, I was pissed. I'm angry that my mother never held me the way I wanted her to. So therefore, I got into relationships where that was mirrored back to me, where the women that I connected with could never hold space for me emotionally. Or let's say if one did come along, I wasn't ready for it because I was so familiar with what I normalized, or what I felt that I couldn't trust women, or the manipulation around. If she showed too much emotion, if she showed that she cared too much, I would probably assume that it was being too clingy or being too affectionate. When you dealt with abuse and so forth, your nervous system is not like normal people who have never dealt with it. So that's why I tell people, empathy, when you're dealing with the fact of people who have dealt with things like that, and then their body holds on to these memories. their bodies, not just their bodies, their emotional their emotional well-being is fucked. It's short-circuited almost. What I mean by that is like short-circuited to where it's a short fuse for a lot of people, to where they, from experience, sometimes just go into this survival mode. So for some, survival is all they know. Survival in relationships, procrastination, avoidance, never really getting to a resolution or solution, or resolution from the very people who it's almost like getting away with a crime. So they thought, and that's the thing about karma. It's almost like I felt like people got away with hurting me. I feel like they got away. And it's not that I didn't care for the world to emphasize for me. It's like, for the person who hurt you, that's that for a lot of us, those who know, because of the heart we have, the love we have, we wanted those very people to be able to emphasize, and hold a space for what they've done. And that's one of the most challenging things to accept, to be able to move on and move through and navigate through and accept that they never will. If ever, they'll take it to the grave before they apologize, before they even say that what they did was wrong and they was hurting and so forth. So again, to those who have dealt with a society, community, and so forth, because I'm telling you, religion, if people were so walking in the path of certain people as they would know that certain figures that did come around, characters, through their ascension, they learned to emphasize. They learned also to see the importance of children. They know the they saw the importance of the heart. And that's how I realized like how a lot of escaping through not just substance abuse, but how religion has also been a scapegoat for a lot of people, taking it to this person rather than conflict resolution, rather than the conflict avoidance, all this and that, and to avoid what needs to be said, to avoid what needs to be felt. And so to those who have had and dealt with people who were emotionally unavailable, abusive, and so forth, now is the moment to hold space for you. And when I be telling y'all like to hold space for your inner child, that affirmation is important, because a lot of you don't want to accept that you were never held by your mother emotionally. There's a difference between her showing you affection and holding you in the physical. You were never held by her and embraced and accepted emotionally, most likely while you were in the womb. And sometimes it has nothing to even do with just that. Sometimes it comes from a space of her never being held or holding herself, holding space for herself. A lot of our mothers and grandmothers, this is the importance of that affirmation, or just that word. I am held. I want you to really feel that. I am held by me. I am held by source, by the creator. And so what that does is like, who do I need emotionally to accept me, or mentally, or even accept my existence? No one. Because if I hold me first, then what? And then what that does is that it goes back to the emotional, when you're dealing with and have dealt with people who are emotionally immature or unavailable, or have dealt with the fact that they haven't progressed emotionally and they ignore what's unresolved, it's basically saying that they don't want to hold themselves accountable for what has went on, for their role actually. and for the role of others. You don't have to take it on, but this is where, again, where that emotional empathy comes in, that a lot of people don't have for themselves, because they've lost their sense of self in trying to either have sympathy for others. And how, when I'm getting clarity of now, it's like, this is probably what happened with a lot of mothers, is where they have they'll have more emotional empathy for their children, especially if they coming in the world and they want to protect them. And what happens is they lose their identity, their own sense of self. When you overextend in these situations due to whatever unexpected events or unforeseen circumstances, what happens is, if you don't have the emotional support around you, because it ain't just about physical support. I've learned, and then it was given to me to share with, especially our matriarch, the women, especially mothers and grandmothers and so forth, that they haven't had the emotional support. Because when you don't have a society or community or country that holds space and have empathy for what women go through and what they've been going through and how they've been mistreated and so forth, then again, you are basically the hole that you think you're digging for them, to keep them in a rut, to keep them in a loop, to keep them from really learning more about themselves. Or because what that does is that what a lack of empathy does is that it has kept, or will keep, a person in that false identity that they've created. Doesn't that make sense? It will keep them overexerting, overextending, whether for others outside of them. It will keep them almost like on the run, burnt out. That's what capitalism has done. That's what the powers that ain't and used to be orchestrated to keep. If they can keep the women more focused on being in their wounded masculinity rather than learning to emphasize for themselves and sit down and feel, then of course the world is going to look like and continue to go downhill from there. Because what do you have when our women are burnt out, when they're tired? What do you have? When the men are so on their high horse, or so prideful, and so in their ego about how much they can accomplish. And then they gain this false sense of leadership through that and try to convince the women to do the same thing. So what ends up happening is this. Again, when you don't have the empathy there, or when you don't have that emotional connection in a healthy way, then again, you will have daughters from these mothers who your mothers can't, they're not able to understand why my daughter, why are we like this? Why are we butting heads? Why? And you thinking you are alike in a way, because whatever you were carrying, you pass right to her. But then notice how some daughters are wanting to reconnect with their mothers, wanting to, because it's a natural thing, because they come from the same foundation. They want to, their mother and daughter bond is different than a mother and son. Just as a father and son connection is different than a father and daughter. They mirror back different energies, but it's all like one and the same. One is teaching one a different perspective. The other is teaching the other a different perspective. For me, I had to learn, learning to be more empathetic is allowing me to realize, as I begin to hold myself more, I begin to hold myself accountable. So when you don't have, or what healing or what exposure does, especially emotions expose who you are. Emotions are gateways. So when you don't have people, when you don't have mothers feeling, then they won't be exposed to different parts of themselves guides them to evolving past what they feel they're stuck in. So if they're just stuck in one emotion, such as being angry, such as being in depression, you know, all these different, going through certain different emotions that just keep them angry, you got to realize how this was orchestrated. Even how the fact of how people classify, especially like indigenous women or indigenous people, how they are angry people. Why? I wonder why. I wonder why when you have created a narrative in a world around self-hatred, which again doesn't emphasize with people who push it, they're not an empathetic people. So now when you have a people who are an empathetic people, or have always been, because that's the origins of it, and then now you have those people, depending on who they are, trying to follow their lead, trying to chase after their dollar, trying to chase after things materialistically, and wonder why they're angry. It's because you're not, because one thing about the feminine archetype, and it's a priority to rest. Being in tune will prioritize you resting. So again, we've society or people have literally watched and even followed people right off a cliff into their own demise. And all of these things that have been projected to make a people, certain people, feel like they're less than devaluable and so forth, just literally reflects people's internal world. Because no matter your color and creed, you know, and whatever backgrounds you come from, again, you could have had people who are so focused on religion, so focused on a career, so focused on status and so forth, that what you're going to see, no matter who they are, y'all going to realize how disconnected people are emotionally, which means how they won't emphasize for people, how they won't care about what you're going through. And that's when it clicked for me. It made so much sense to where some of us are here to reinvent that generationally and create that tradition again. Bring things to its original origin, or, you know, to its original state. The root of that. When I think about the divine mother, the big mother energy and so forth, she sees all. She connects all. That energy of femininity, the holistic aspect of that, she see everyone as her children, because it's coming from a soul aspect that's higher than what y'all what is represented by the spirit, which is, you know, represents the father. And it's funny how we went from a era or age of the father so-called being using more of his logic. But y'all don't realize, I told you energetically how this shit break down, is the fact of how mama represents the emotion, father represents the spirit. So notice how a lot of things have been twisted, manipulated, deceiving the people. So then what that mass deception will cause women to not be empathetic, because a lot of religion, when it comes to that, you have a lot of women who are not empathetic. A lot of them are focused more on, it's like pleasing something externally, the validation, getting, and a lot of men, through their sorcery, through their manipulation when it comes to religion, have manipulated and kept women so boxed in, or tried to attempt to keep them using their fear tactics, using their resources, using their monetary system, financially, using so many different things. And the very thing they did was just rob the women of their essence, or try to siphon them, just to create these systems. Because they know who is majority of the world, who brings life into this world, who holds that energy more than anybody, Who navigates better through emotion than anybody? Because we come from them, from that emotional resonance. It's not to exclude men from leadership, but it's who is enabling the leadership, because that's where the leadership truly comes from. Who is watering the grounds that he's on? Who is enabling him? When you see kids go out here and you see a lot of shit happening in this world, how can you not look to the root of it? I will always have to learn, like, you know what? It ain't just the father. What's the mother? I wonder what drove that kid to be so impulsive. I wonder what's really going on with him. And when I look at the depths of all this, when I say Big Mama, the energy of that is coming back to protect, what she's doing now, that energy is protecting her children, is to see who has done what to her children. Because when y'all think of God, or when y'all immediately think about y'all use gender, or y'all go to a man immediately, and you're forgetting about the importance of the balance in the universe of feminine and masculinity archetypes and principles outside of gender, but outside of the fact of you're forgetting about who holds all this shit together. This is why my message pertains and connects. It goes. It's energy in reverse. It's that energy from whether it begins with a daughter that still reflects the mother, the father who still reflects the son. You know what I'm saying? So that energy is being reversed. That curse is being reversed, and it happens inwardly first. That's how energy unfolds, from the inside out, not the outside in. Your emotions come from within. So it's to remind that all women, you have forgotten about the daughter. You have forgot about what grounds you. Your emotions are what grounds you. You forgot about the empathy for yourself. This is why you have been so against each other when it comes to, the mother and daughter conflict. You amongst each other as women, dividing yourself. I'm telling you, that's what the man who is not holistic in his ways, who is very manipulative and so forth, that's what he has done first, is to make sure that he knows how important your children are to you. And if you don't have children, he knows how important it is to plant fear inside of you, to disrupt your foundation, to make it seem like he has all the authority. He doesn't. You're hearing it from a man who knows that he's in tune and is very much aware of what's going on, who sometimes feels like he's 15, 20 steps ahead, but at the same moment, if I could not forget about the little boy within me as a father, then why are y'all still trying to forget about the little girl and the daughter within you? You are someone's daughter. And when you are someone's daughter, that should highlight the fact of, was your father healthy? Was he an empathetic man? How he approached, how did he treat your mother? Then that reflects then what? If he was a father, he was your father, then that goes back to the fact of he was a son. So then that son aspect, as energy breaks down, it shows you, okay, what was his experience with his mother? Is he still being smothered by his mother emotionally? Is he still in an enmeshment, unhealthy attachment connection? Is he still unaware that he has this emotional incessive connection with his mother? Are you aware of these things? Do you see how I just broke that energy down? That's energy. The daughter is the grounded energy. The father is the spirit of that. The wind, the logic. The spirit aspect, that all these things connect to, from the higher planes all the way down to the lower planes, for what you see right now. And what's happening, reverse, it's from the fact of how you have been taught and convinced to forget about your emotion, your inner world. That's what has been pushed so you can be silenced. Your intuition. It's almost like something's been shut down within you to make sure you don't listen to your intuition, to make sure you don't reclaim your personal power as not just a woman, but as a little girl who was silenced young. How was that little girl silenced? And that's where you see the daughter, father, son, mother, and how you connect it to your reality and to your world. Let's say if you're just a daughter now, then the importance of your connection will see what and how your connection is with your father. For some of you, you think that your father is immediately something religious. And then for some of you, the man don't even fucking look like you. Don't even look like you. It don't even look like you. I saw a message, but think about that, especially for my indigenous women around the world. You see how the manipulation of like the illusion that's been cast upon you? Because that's psychological warfare. So if you're just a daughter, you don't have any children, ask yourself what type of relationship that you have had with your father. If he was an empathetic man, if he was a man that created safety for you, then most likely you carry that within you. But do you feel, and with him, have you felt emotionally safe? Because that, again, will mirror back to the fact of the son that he once was before he came to father. And now, that son aspect, again, beginning with the mother, you have to ask yourself, that's how deep you go. Like, that's how much you reflect on. What was his relationship with his mother? Because that, again, will show you his first teachings, his emotional resonance, how he feels emotionally safe, how he communicates, how he operates in the world. And if he didn't have a mother present, most likely he has dealt with an abandonment wound, and most likely he will probably cling on to women in an unhealthy way or abuse his power in an unhealthy way. That's how some men have created their status. Do y'all see how this shit is fucking collapsing? Because this is the shattering of the illusion in the structures, because we have built from the fact of where the distorted mother began. And if she smothered the sons that you see now that are men to this day, most likely they have built careers, structures around that very energy. No matter how much money they've accumulated, no matter what, and even with their children, and so forth. Because I'm telling you what's going to be really highlighted. You're going to start to realize if a man isn't in tune with the femininity and so forth, he don't give a fuck what happens to his daughter. So what you have, look, even, that's why I be trying to tell y'all, even if you didn't have a father as women, you still got men who are there physically, but still don't have no emotional connection. They have been brought into generations where they've used and abused their power. And when they're not healed and things are unresolved, when they have suppressed emotions and they continue to repress it through marriages and repress it through connections and so forth, then you got to realize they've been performing the whole time. It's a performance. And what I mean by that, y'all know it all too well, because again, y'all intuition. You know. But for a lot of you, some of us, we were hard-headed. We still lay with these men. Some women, we still lay with these men. Just as men did the same thing, we still lay with these women and created children. Until we got to this place and realized, like, whoa, I didn't ever think to realize, like, because when you think about how people, if you have an emotional unavailable parent, they're not going to, what that does is that it doesn't really protect you from the physical aspect, because the emotional is a spiritual thing. It'll teach you how to be discerning and use your intuition. to know how to choose a partner, to know how even to what to choose in a partner. And that's okay. That's okay. Because that's why I told you it's going to be a theme of people building communities, the mixing of families, meaning like there are going to be people who come to that self-realization like, wow, it's not so much, you're going to come to the awareness that within yourself that there isn't or hasn't ever been this emotional connection, or you just don't connect in the way that you feel that will be longevity, or so much has happened to where now you want to build or even start over with yourself, and then just connect with people who are in more emotional resonance or, alignment with your core values. Man, when you see the fact that, a lot of people pleasing, a lot of stuff people have done, some people, let's say military, religious wise, tradition, whatever tradition has been in other countries, they've just done things. And it hasn't been from a genuine place, because again, when you see, man, I used to hear about that shit, how some people used to get married so young and how their fathers or certain people would force them in other countries. I'm like, this got to be some, what? The things that have happened to women so much, and this is not to exclude men, I realize that what has happened to women has also happened to me. Do you get what I'm saying when I say that? What happened to my mother, what was unresolved, also happened with me in the womb. And then that played out physically. And then I just demonstrated in a different way. Or even if I didn't demonstrate it, I attracted it. Or I pretty much allow similar behavior patterns due to soaking it up like a sponge to play out in my world. Because if you're not coming from people who are emotionally stable, then as a child, you're not concerned about this until you grow up. Until shit start really happening, until you start realize how emotionally unavailable you are, unstable, then that, and being impulsive and so forth. Man, man, I'm telling you, some of y'all have never been held emotionally. That means your mother never. This is why they run from accountability. That's why you hear people, a lot of men who come into themselves, and women do the same thing, where they're wanting a man to change. Or you hear men say women don't hold accountability, they're not accountable. You know what? It ain't even their fault. It ain't their fault. I don't even blame them, because I ain't even finna. I ain't doing that bashing shit. I ain't dehumanizing, trying to belittle people. I approach it, I deliver it. My delivery is just the way it is, but I ain't doing it in a way to be like, oh, y'all ain't this, you ain't that, nah. It's more so you're seeing the collective energy where their generations was not held accountable. Or the fact of, like, when you look at empathy and the different versions of empathy, then empathy will have you look at yourself before you pass judgment. Now think about generations that we come from that. Think about people who actually push racism or self-hatred. Think about people who will curse you out or do everything because you don't believe in their religion. Y'all just think about what women collectively, the distorted mother energy. I'm gonna get to men too. Just think about that. Ponder on that. Ponder on the fact of who's been the image. Because I told my partner, I said, when you look at the image of an America and the image in who was at a time at that moment in reign, and you have to notice what people were protecting in the name of honor of men that don't look like me. Then also the women who enable that. So again, what happens is that Chiron and Aries aspect is shattering all of that, because it forces people, these transits in astrology force people to see themselves. And even if they don't want to see themselves, whatever that's been pushed down and repressed and suppressed, that's why they come out and act the way they do, because that's them. This is the versions of them that they can no longer hide, because that's that distorted feminine. That's that feminine aspect that is unbalanced, that is unrighteous, that is impure. That's the version, that's the energy, again, collectively, that has been the representation of the so-called America in the last few hundred years, or whatever you want to call it. And so now that energy is purging. And what it does is that it forces women like that, who choose to uphold that, not all, but you know where I'm getting at, the collective image of that. It forces them now, whether they know it or not, it's like a mirror being held up to their face. And what that does is that they can either stay and support and enable the men due to probably going back to whatever childhood, because when you think about the energy of how people represent father and mother energy, they both mirror back whatever within them in choosing their partners, because a lot of women gonna come to that realization that they ain't shit, in the sense of the fact of that's all they've been building on is shit. Instead of planting seeds and building on things with integrity and authenticity, they're gonna come to that realization like, oh my gosh, if they have empathy, because I'm telling y'all, when you're dealing with people who normally know what has happened to people in this country, they don't have empathy. They don't give a fuck what happens to you. They never did. That's an energy. That's a spirit. That's a hatred. That's a jealousy. These are spirits driving people. And the very thing they hate, of course, not only are themselves, but when love and authenticity comes and shatters and shake their foundation, they dare. Why you think that when it comes to people such as people who are indigenous, or someone comes along confidently in who they are and they're comfortable in their skin and they walk upright and they loving themselves and they've gotten through the worst and so forth, the only people opposing that are people who can no longer push their narrative or wanting to project their narrative of self-hatred onto other people. And they can only display through their wounded masculinity. So it's just as much as these women feel like they're more valuable because of their husbands have all these material things. They feel like they're more valuable because their husband has this Fortune 500 company and their husband has all this and he's such and such in a group and oh my gosh, he's all American and you know he's da 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 da. And I sit back and I be like, baby girl, you know fucking well that man ain't got no type of integrity. You don't even know what it is, because most likely he probably reflects the same. He probably reflects the same energy that your father did. That's what you gotta realize. When you start looking at people in their generations and so forth, I be like, these motherfuckers just ignorant. You're just really ignorant. And it's like little children following the crowd or following someone else. And you're gonna literally follow all these men who have gained, who you thought that has pretty much gained the world, and you know, and what does it profit a man to gain the world and lose his own soul? Meaning that he's lost sight of his essence. He's lost sight of his self. He lost sight of the feminine attributes of what creates everything and what gives birth to everything. So whatever that feminine archetype begins with, he most likely is going to create shit that is going to pretty much fuels his ego, which a lot of y'all are dealing with, men, and probably in with that, fuels his ego and could care nothing about you. Because that's what you're seeing now, your leadership can care nothing about you. Can give two fucks about you and what happened to you and your kids. You just had babies by him. You didn't care about his core values. You cared about how he can protect and provide, because most likely you probably seen your mother and father go through that. Because a lot of those generations, those boomers and stuff, a lot of them, I told you, they came from a place of survival. They wasn't coming from a place, some of them, they was trying to get in and build on and take out whoever they could just to build what they could. This has happened through eons. This has happened through so many different generations of people, beginning with indigenous people, darker people. Y'all always skip over that part, and they still do it to their own people. So what the problem is, y'all gotta start letting people of certain, like, nah, don't, I'm doing it in this way. But you still gotta do the inner work. It don't matter your color and creed, you still gotta do the inner work. Why would I say and be like, oh God, I don't have the solutions. I have the words and I have the things to say, the message, but I'm not living your life for you to find that solution. Y'all choose to be with the man, or have been with the man who has this warlike consciousness or the destructive spirit. And what makes you think he has an ounce of empathy or try to face anything within himself? What makes you think moving forward he's going to have it for you or your children or even you, baby girl? This was gonna be so fucking funny. This was gonna be so like Uno reverse, or gonna be so comical in these moments. It's just as anybody else that again, it's not all people of lighter shade, but majority of those who know what they've hidden and what no longer can be hidden in their hearts. It's what's in your hearts. I've dealt with women of all cultures and creeds like this, like whether I've dated them or not. I knew myself to be more of an empathetic person than they were. And that's why people will date people, let's say, who are darker and so forth, but they don't want to emphasize with them. They'll have this infatuation or this attraction to them, but yet you got a father at home who hate everything about himself and most likely don't even like people that are darker, which whatever reason that is. That just simply reflects the fact of you hate what's original. You hate what's original. You hate your brother pretty much. If you want to look at it in a humanitarian aspect, you hate your own brother. Y'all hate your own sisters and brothers. Y'all think it's a family thing. Nah, in spirit and on a deeper level, that's what humanity is. Different hues of people. Man, I be seeing how people go out here and live their life. Like I said, it ain't about just it being perfect and all like that. You just, like, when you look at the climate of even how your colleges and how so much stuff is set up, sports and everything. I remember going through, I remember at a time in Ohio, I ain't never experienced this. I thought like this was like a fucking dream. And I would see all those kids predominantly like, Caucasian or whatever they want to subscribe to be. And they would be out there partying. And I'm like, bro, I've never in my life seen this many people on the campus playing beer pong, getting drunk. And then like the backstory of all of that, it's like when you don't teach your daughters to protect themselves, to lean into their intuition, you know what happens in those fraternities. You know what those little boys are capable of. Because when you have things spiritually that has followed generations and so forth, and people never acknowledge it, What makes you think that they don't do and treat those girls the same way in college? They just get away with it. A lot of people get paid off. A lot of people do things, and a lot of those young women never talk about it. They're afraid. Now, don't let one of these students. Let me show you what abusive power is. Don't let one of these students' dad be a coach or a dean, or their dad owns something. Oh yeah, they'll pay people off. It's an abuse of power. Y'all still don't matter who you are. I don't care about these men in status and whatever it is that think that they exempt from karma. Bitch, you not exempt. You still only collecting karma. Your time is coming. Every dog has his day. Every dog. That shit is gonna be like a domino effect. Y'all really think people sit back and don't really know what be going on? I told you I don't talk to so many women about some stuff. I be in disbelief. I was telling someone, I was like, y'all do know, like, people in the South. There are some people who have never seen people that look like us. They grew up so protected or so overly protected. And this reflects the feminine archetype, because one thing about being secure, I've learned this, in being secure emotionally, it's also realize how discerning your intuition is and how protected you are in spirit. How divinely guided and protected you are, to where you know how safe you have to be within yourself to feel safe again. And see, this is what has kept, how could I say this? How do I break this down? Like, this is what kept, I can say, a lot of people from progressing, is when I talk about the root chakra, is the fact of the uncertainty around how to navigate the world, how to navigate life. And if you never got that young, but you've been given this blueprint of go to school, do this, do that, get married, y'all have to realize that was literally created to keep people boxed in, to keep people from living in alignment. That was never for humanity. That shit was orchestrated purposefully to keep, these different classes of people, to keep what y'all call the elite of whatever it is in a space of feeling like this hierarchy. And in reality, it was only created from fear. Fear, I burp when I say that. And to keep other people in fear, to keep other people from rising out of their lower chakras. When you're sure of yourself, I'm sure as fuck that I know that I am amazing, I'm great, I'm grand, I'm divinely guided and protected. Because it's written. Because the last is being made first. See, the first shall be last and the last shall be first. That whole analogy, or that text, it was showing you that in any moment, your life can change in the blink of an eye. So you may seem that you've been first in something, and just like that, you can be last. That's saying, like, you can be up one day and down. Why do you think all of this shit is collapsing? That's why a lot of people can feel like they've been behind. And in reality, you're just being made first. And that can look like being the first to do something in your lineage, the first to face generational patterns and break them, the first to love on yourself, the first to break the racism in your lineage, the first to step outside of religion, the first to go no contact for your mother and father, the first to do whatever it is. Now, when you look at the old world and the old world narrative, when the last time you did something for the first time? If you don't see how a lot of what they're doing, it's the same repetitive cycle, ritualistic shit. Now that the world is evolving, now that the collective is shifting, they're realizing people are pulling back their power. Because you got to realize what you pay attention to, you give your energy to. Now that people are not watching and doing this, and they're not, entertaining the bullshit and not giving their energy to stuff, It's divine intervention. It's a shift, and it's beautiful. It's so beautiful. And so I'm honored to be able to share these messages. You gotta realize divine intervention looks like shit that will force people to see their mirror, to force even people of lighter shade to realize how much hatred they had in their heart, how much they have been going along with the flow, and really the illusion of structure they feel like they've had. You've had no structure because you've ignored the feminine archetype and the principles that give birth to those structures. And if it isn't something that's holistic, and if it isn't reflecting things that connects to the all, then you, my dear, I don't care who you are, you, my dear, are gonna fall victim or fall short because of the fact that you don't even realize what you are a part of. And that's the message to a lot of people in certain demographics. You're gonna realize how structured this shit has never been. That's what the movie The Matrix was telling you when he said, Neo, this is what your world really look like. Exactly. Exactly. Behind the scenes, it's just like the Wizard of Oz. Whole time, that one individual was casting this illusion to have this grand doses. What's the word? Grand whatever it is of, making it seem like everything was this and this and this and that. Man, that shit is crumbling and illusions are falling. People start to realize, like, what the fuck? The same illusion that was cast on your mother and father for them to live in whatever delusion they was living in is now, you start to realize, what the fuck? That shit ain't working for me. So now a lot of people are going to be looking for that empathy for other people, and their mirror is going to be that they're not going to give it to you because you don't even have it. And your smile and your money and your material can't cover up the fact of your motherfucking character. The shit that that was there, whatever going on inside of you. You can't cover it up no more. No matter what your status, your creed, or your nationality, you can't cover it up no more. You see how much shit coming out now? How greedy people are? And whole time you think here they are in this religion or this and this, and whole time they greedy. Whole time they using kids to escape through. No, that in the divine, the feminine archetype, the divine mother is exposing all, because it begins with the emotion, and that's what the water is. It's like a cleansing that's happening. So that's kind of what I gotta say today. Y'all take care of yourself. Peace and blessings. Shalom.